All aboard the Bulleit train. It's time for a head-to-head. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, today I'm checking out Bulleit Bourbon and Bulleit Rye, putting them head to head to see how much similarity exists between the two and what a massive difference, or not massive difference, there is between a rye-heavy bourbon and a rye-heavy rye. Now, these two, obviously both from Bulleit, so they should retain some similarities, but in order to be called a bourbon, this needs to have at least 51% corn in its mash bill, and to be called a rye, this needs to have at least 51% rye in its mash bill, but otherwise they can be made in pretty much exactly the same way. The difference here though is that whilst this is 51% corn, it's also got a massive amount of rye in it, and the actual full mash bills for both of these are going to be on screen in a second, but the rye of this is a massive 95% rye, so huge differences in the mash bills that should lead to a massive difference in flavour. But when I first tasted the Bulleit Rye a few videos ago when comparing it to the Sazerac Rye, which is a low rye, I was kind of amazed that given that it's 95% rye, actually wasn't anywhere near as big and hot and spicy as I thought it was going to be. So this might be quite an interesting comparison. Now, both of these bottles come in at 45% ABV or 90 proof, so it is a decent head-to-head. I am expecting a big difference, but well, we'll have to break it into them to find out. So let's get pouring. Not the best cork pop. That was better. Right then, in the glasses, to be honest, they look pretty much identical. The rye a touch darker, I reckon, but look, a lot of the colour, or all of the colour in fact, in these comes from the barrels, so that's just probably a small difference there, but yeah, pretty much exactly the same. On the nose, the Bulleit, they're both Bulleit. On the nose, the bourbon. I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I do like it. It's got this really spiky menthol, eucalyptus, honey, but not too sweet. You really don't get that proper kind of toffee caramel vanilla bomb you can on some. It's definitely a more, I say, complex whiskey for a relatively entry-level one compared to most, but at the same time, it has got a few slightly rough edges. But yeah, I do like that. I do like that. Right then, the rye in comparison. How different is this going to be? Weirdly, nowhere near as much flavour on the aroma as the bourbon. It's really soft, fresh, spicy, peppery, bit grassy in places. Still got a bit of that menthol edge, but yeah, I don't know. It seems to lack body. It's got a lot of these similarities, but it feels dulled down in comparison. So which way we're going to do this? We opened the bourbon first, so let's do that one. Let's give it a go. Cheers. It's sweet and spicy, this one, which I think is why I like it. You do start to get a bit of that caramel coming in from the kind of regular bourbon style, but because of the rye content, heaps of pepper, heaps of savouriness coming in with it. It's got the menthol, the grassy, the eucalyptus notes as well. Like it's balanced, this, like in quite an extreme way. It's quite sweet and it's also quite the other way. Yeah, it is something a bit special. Well, I say special for its price point. Right then, water break quickly, and onto the rye. Cheers. I'm still flummoxed by this because every rye heavy bourbon I've had, this prime example of course, has been like a bourbon but with loads more spice, loads more edge, loads more, I guess, high level competing flavours. But the 95% rye has this soft, almost like watermelon sweetness to it. The menthol's still there, but it's not over the top. It feels lacking in flavour a little bit, but like if you were only drinking this and actually took your time to sip and consider it, I think it is really interesting. It's just not all in your face. I don't know how this is a thing, but whether it's down to barrel usage, whether it's a reaction that takes place when there's a lot of corn and a lot of rye together, but yeah, the bourbon way hotter, way sharper, way spikier. I'm not going to go as far as to say that the rye is easygoing and sweet, But in comparison, it absolutely is. Like, that's reminding me of a fruit salad, where the bourbon is reminding me of a really spicy chili. Like, not in the same extremes, of course, but yeah, it's just, wow. I am a bit flummoxed by that. I know rye brings in a lot of grassy notes, but the fact that, yeah, it should be hotter. It should be, in my mind, it should be all the more potent, and it just isn't. If you previously thought that you don't like rye-heavy whiskey because you don't like Bulleit, well, it turns out that might not be the case, because that rye is so soft, so smooth, so sweet, so subtle, that, yeah, I don't know what it is. Has anyone else found this? Let me know if you know why in the comments below, please, because I am a little bit shocked by this. I really thought that the rye was just going to feel like a bigger, breathier version of the original Bulleit, because so much, in my mind, of the flavours in the regular Bulleit, or the bourbon version, should I say, come from the fact that it's rye heavy. And yet, as soon as you go all in on the rye, not at all. Soft, subtle. I've said all the words now. Yeah, really quite interesting. What I do need to say, though, is that if you are after bourbon flavours, the vanilla, caramel, chocolatey, sweet, oaky stuff, the rye isn't that. The rye feels like a distinctly different kind of spirit. It's got a load more vegetal notes that I'd associate with other distilled spirits. Like, it's not a proper bourbon, and it's not meant to be. It's a straight rye at 95%. So that's something to consider. I think it's actually an easier drink, but if your flavour profile that you're seeking is all vanilla bomb, well, actually probably don't bother with either of these, in truth be told. But if you like a lot of flavour, the regular Bulleit, absolutely fantastic. If you want something different, something when you're not quite sure what you want and you want something a bit softer, fruitier, fresher, it's really fresh this, then the rye, I think, is the way to go. But yeah, both fantastic bottles, both I'm very happy to have on my shelf, and yeah, that's really all I've got to say about them. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.